It's Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. Trump says it's time to move on to amnesty or not to amnesty. That is the very real question. And the one demographic you've never heard of that Elon Musk's America Party could appeal to. Next on the AM Update. Former CIA Director John Brennan and ex-FBI Director James Comey are being investigated for potential criminal conduct related to the 2016 Trump-Russia collusion hoax. The criminal referral involved Brennan was passed to the FBI by current CIA Director John Ratcliffe. That's according to Justice Department sources and Fox News. The investigation into the Obama-era spy chief involves allegations he made false statements to Congress and is currently underway. It's unclear if the FBI's probe into Brennan, one of 51 intelligence officials who falsely suggested Hunter Biden's laptop could be Russian disinformation, encompasses more than his alleged false testimony to lawmakers. Meanwhile, the specific nature of the potential criminal matter involving Comey is unclear, but an investigation has been opened. I'm sure this momentous announcement has nothing to do with the Jeffrey Epstein developments this week. Yesterday, during Trump's sixth cabinet meeting in 6 months, by the way, President Joe Biden had, I think, 9 cabinet meetings during his entire tenure in office. During Trump's sixth cabinet meeting yesterday in front of the media, he fielded a question, not really, about Jeffrey Epstein and the Department of Justice's insistence that he really did kill himself. Here's what Trump has to say.
Can you say why there was a minute missing from the jailhouse tape?
Yeah, sure. If
could I just interrupt for 1 second? Are you still talking about Jeffrey Epstein? This guy's been talked about for years. You're asking, we have Texas, we have this, we have all of the things. And are people still talking about this guy, this creep? That is unbelievable.
So President Trump says time to grow up and move on. Stop talking about Jeffrey Epstein. You know, it could just be that everybody, including Trump's own influencers, including much of his own base, are really just out over their skis and were totally wrong. And now everybody has to eat a little bit of crow when it comes to Jeffrey Epstein. But it's not really making that, if that's the reality, it's not really making that medicine go down with a spoonful of sugar to release this information the way the DOJ and now President Trump has. Meanwhile, during the rest of his press conference, the topic of amnesty and immigration came up. He floated the idea last week in Iowa about helping farmers out, quote unquote, and helping those in the hospitality industry out. Here he is saying amnesty really isn't on the table.
We want to give the farmers the people they need, but we're not talking amnesty. Laura, do you want to say something?
So we're not going to give amnesty to illegal aliens, but we do need to give the farmers the people that they need. Brooke Rollins, Ag Secretary, also added yesterday morning.
I can't underscore enough. There will be no amnesty. The mass deportations continue, but in a strategic way, and we move the workforce towards automation and 100% American participation, which again, with 34 million people, able-bodied adults on Medicaid, we should be able to do that fairly quickly. Thank you.
So both from the Ag Secretary, Brooke Rollins, and from President Trump, they're insisting no amnesty. It was interesting details there from Brooke Rollins saying we need to do this in a strategic way. We need to be able to replace those illegal alien workers with automation and other strategies. So we'll see how that goes. Would like to get some more clarification on what the White House is thinking. Also, President Trump is not happy with Russian President Vladimir Putin. Here he is again during that cabinet meeting.
But that was a war that should have never happened, and a lot of people are dying, and it should end. And I don't know, we get a lot of thrown at us by Putin, for you want to know the truth. He's very nice all the time, but it turns out to be meaningless.
Do you want to sanction him? Lindsey Graham has a sanctions bill on Russia. Do you want him to move
I'm looking at it, yeah. No, I'm looking. The Senate is passed a very, very tough sanctions bill. Yeah, I'm looking at it.
Can you sign that?
It's an optional bill. It's totally at my option. They pass it totally at my option and to terminate totally at my option. And I'm looking at it very strongly.
So maybe sanctions, more sanctions even for those who do business with Russia, like China, and I believe I saw India as well. President Trump also added he is ordering more weapons to be sent to Ukraine. This thing will just not end, that conflict. Tariffs were also discussed during that cabinet meeting. I want to talk about that in just a little bit. Before I tell you about this, for the second time in as many weeks, another Supreme Court justice has absolutely pilloried Ketanji Brown Jackson, This time, it's coming from somebody actually ideologically aligned with her. That would be Sonia Sotomayor. The Supreme Court ruled 8-1 yesterday that President Trump can go ahead and continue on with his mass firings of federal programs and federal employees for the second time in 2 weeks, as I said. That Supreme Court Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson has been smacked down. Sonia Sotomayor is doing it this time. She wrote in the concurring opinion in the 8-1 ruling, quote, "I agree with Justice Jackson that the president cannot restructure federal agencies in a manner inconsistent with congressional mandates. Here, however, the relevant executive order directs agencies to plan reorganizations and reductions in force consistent with applicable law, and the resulting joint memorandum from the Office of Management and Budget and Office of Personnel Management reiterates as much. The plans themselves are not before this court at this stage, and we thus have no occasion to consider whether they can and will be carried out consistent with the constraints of law." So that's another liberal justice just completely smacking around Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson. Second time in 2 weeks. First, it was Amy Coney Barrett. This time, Sonia Sotomayor. As I said, tariffs were discussed during that cabinet meeting yesterday, which spanned multiple hours. Here's Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent.
We've taken in about $100 billion in tariff income thus far this year, and that's with the tariff, the major tariff not having started till the second quarter. So we could expect that could be well over $300 billion by the end of the year. We don't agree with CBO scoring, but for those who do, the CBO scored tariff income over the next 10 years at $2.8 trillion, which we think is probably low.
So are prices rising? Have tariffs so far been inflationary? Council of Economic Advisors Chairman Stephen Mirren says absolutely not.
So in new work that our team has done, it'll be on the Council of Economic Advisors website today, what we did was we looked at, in every category in the inflation index, we looked at how much of it is coming from imports, both whether the good itself is an import, but also whether it, uses intermediate goods, that is parts in between the raw product and the finished product that come from abroad. And so we have a measure for each product in the index about how much of an import it is. And what we find is exactly what you said before, that imported goods are actually getting cheaper.
Here is NBC6 in Miami, South Florida, on Alligator Alcatraz, and they talked to a detainee that's being held there, getting ready to be deported.
Liamsi Izquierdo on the phone describing what it's like inside the so-called Alligator Alcatraz. Says he's been at the detention facility out in the Everglades since Friday. No water to bathe, he says. It's been 4 days since he showered. 400 people he believes are inside the facility. Only gets fed once a day, he says, and some of the food had worms. Detention center lights are on 24/7. The mosquitoes, he says, are the size of elephants. Izquierdo's partner, Katia, says he's a permanent resident who was arrested last week. First taken to TGK, then to Miramar, and finally to the Everglades facility.
Good morning, sir. You speak English?
No. Here is Izquierdo in bond court last Thursday.
You're charged with aggravated assault with deadly weapon and battery.
The police report says it all has to do with a violent dispute with a tow company worker who was trying to repossess a jet ski. Now back to the call. Complaints they're not allowed to go outside and the tents are freezing.
So this man, who is a criminal, which of course all illegal aliens are criminals, they've broken the law. But to boot, once he broke the law once by entering the country illegally, he broke it again. Aggravated assault, according to police. He claims his stay at the Alligator Alcatraz has been marked by mosquitoes the size of elephants, and that the tents in the middle of the Everglades in Florida in July are freezing, he says. And no food. And the food that they do have has worms. And he hasn't been able to take a shower. Yeah, that dude's a psychopath, and I'm going to be thankful when he's out of the country. When we come back, Jeff Bezos is selling his shares at Amazon, at least a good chunk of them. We now have a new frontier in the battle against Antifa, or more appropriately, their battle against us. and why there's one demographic you probably never heard of because I made it up that might be a fit for the America Party. That's coming up next. I told you the other morning about that attack on police officers outside an Immigration and Customs Enforcement facility in Alvarado, Texas, over the long 4th of July weekend. Well, now we have some more details on what exactly went down, and I think it's a new front in Antifa's battle against civilization. This is a post from Andy No at the Post Millennial. 10 heavily armed Antifa-associated far-left extremists have been federally charged for the attempted murder of federal officers after they allegedly carried out an attack at an ICE facility on the 4th of July in Alvarado, Texas, to lure police and shoot them dead. An Alvarado police officer was shot in the neck but survived. Here are the names of those charged. Cameron Arnold, who has a so-called trans name of Autumn Hill of Dallas, Texas. Nathan Bauman of College Station. Savannah Batten of Fort Worth. Joy Gibson of Dallas. Zachary Evans of Waxahachie, Texas. Bedford Morris of Dallas. Seth Sykes of Kennedale. Elizabeth Soto of Fort Worth. Inez Soto of Fort Worth. And Daniel Rolando Sanchez charged separately in this incident. No goes on to say, this is a post from Andy No, the Antifa militants allegedly involved in the 4th of July terrorist attack shooting at the ICE facility in Alvarado came extremely armed. They had multiple AR rifles, pistols, ammunition, radios, body armor, leftist, anarchist, political propaganda material, electromagnetic blocking devices, and more. In the rush to escape the shooting in which a police officer was shot in the neck, the shooters discarded or dropped some firearms near the scene. A search at one of the suspects' homes recovered 9 additional firearms and more body armor vests. At the home of another militant suspect, federal investigators also found a stash of Antifa anarchist propaganda texts about how to carry out violent insurrections. The 10 members of the Antifa cell have been charged with multiple counts of attempted murder of a federal officer and discharging a firearm in furtherance of a crime of violence. An 11th militant was charged separately for hiding evidence. So, why is this a new front in the ongoing battle that Antifa has against civilization? This is the first time I can remember where it wasn't just a singular Antifa agent, or maybe a couple acting in tandem with masks on in the dead of night. This was a coordinated cell group of 10 and now 11 individuals who made a plan, carried it out in an attempt to ambush police officers and other federal agents. To me, that marks a new front again for Antifa. And it's very scary because that could happen anywhere. Anywhere where Antifa is in large order, large quantity, you just know they're chomping at the bit to sow their chaos and devastation. Amazon founder Jeff Bezos sold nearly 3 million shares worth $665 million over 2 days in July. Stock sale is part of a plan announced earlier this year that will see Bezos unload around 25 million shares of Amazon through May of 2026. Bezos, who stepped down as Amazon CEO in 2021, sold $736.7 million in stock during the final days of June. He still has more than 900 million shares of Amazon, valued at close to $200 billion. The latest stock sale comes shortly after Bezos' $50 million high-profile wedding to Lauren Sanchez. Now, this is, as I said, part of a larger plan to offload a bunch of shares of his own company that he founded. But others have speculated why he's unloaded so much so quickly. I think the answer is pretty obvious to me. It's Prime Days. Well, the new motion picture Superman comes out later this week, directed by James Gunn. His brother and actor Sean Gunn was interviewed at the world premiere, and Warner Brother executives are probably crapping themselves listening to what he had to say about the upcoming movie.
It is exactly what the movie is about, I think, that, like, we support our people, you know? We love our immigrants. Yes, Superman is an immigrant, and yes, the people that we support in this country are immigrants, and if you don't like that, then you're not American.
They have tried so hard, that would be Warner Brothers, who have bankrolled this film. They have tried so hard for months to market this movie in a way that is not explicitly woke, to telegraph to the wider world that this is going to be a true unifying tale of superheroism, of Superman, the original, the OG superhero. And now in the last 48 hours, we have multiple instances, both from James Gunn, now his brother Sean Gunn, who has a very small role in this movie, of blowing that out of the water as we head into opening weekend. I will say early reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, those are starting to come in, and they have it, I think I saw 91% fresh, which has me concerned. And now here's this. Vice President J.D. Vance addressed the Claremont Institute this week and dropped this bomb on New York, probably the next mayor of New York, Zoran Mamdani. And the absolute irony of what he's trying to do when he's trying to do it. There's a lot of truth in what Vice President Vance has to say here.
And that brings me back, finally, to the next likely mayor of New York. Today is July 5th, 2025, which means, as all of you know, that yesterday we celebrated the 249th anniversary of the birth of our nation. Now, the person who wishes to lead our largest city had, according to multiple media reports, never once publicly mentioned America's Independence Day in earnest. But when he did so this year, this is what he said, and this is an actual quote. Quote, "America is beautiful, contradictory, unfinished. I am proud of our country even as we constantly strive to make it better." End quote. There is no gratitude in those words. No sense of owing something to this land and the people who turned its wilderness into the most powerful nation on earth. Zoran Mamdani's father fled Uganda when the tyrant Idi Amin decided to ethnically cleanse his nation's Indian population. Mamdani's family fled violent racial hatred, only for him to come to this country, a country built by people he never knew, overflowing with generosity to his family, offering a haven from the kind of violent ethnic conflict that is commonplace in world history, but it is not commonplace here. And he dares, on our 249th anniversary, to congratulate it by paying homage to its incompleteness and to its, as he calls it, contradiction. I wonder, has he ever read the letters from boy soldiers in the Union Army to parents and sweethearts that they'd never see again? Has he ever visited the gravesite of a loved one who gave their life to build the kind of society where his family could escape racial theft and racial violence? Has he ever looked in the mirror and recognized that he might not be alive were it not for the generosity of a country he dares to insult on its most sacred day? Who the hell does he think that he is?
Well done, Vice President J.D. Vance, pointing out the supreme irony and, let's just face it, evil of somebody like Zoran Mamdani rising to power in the nation's largest city on the eve of the nation's 250th anniversary. The choice has never been so clear. And finally, air analysis, slightly acidic, mostly necessary. I think there is one constituency that Elon Musk's new America Party might actually appeal to and have some success with. And I think it's a constituency that actually might hurt the Democrats more than it will Republicans. This constituency, I think, is, well, I don't think it's widespread, but I think it's there. I'm not sure how deep it actually runs. And there's an archetype I'll share in a little bit about what I think this constituency looks like. But first, let's name it. It's called Hipsterian. Hipsterian. I think there's a whole subset of millennials who are very dogmatic about one thing and one thing only. It's that they're not dogmatic about anything. They're very dogmatic about not being dogmatic about anything. Their only distinguishing quality is that they are indistinguishably distinguishable, if that makes any sense whatsoever. Hipsterians also believe that they are above it all, that they are rising above constantly on a constant basis the two-party duopoly because they're just above it all. They like things that you've never heard of. They listen to bands that they've never even heard of. In fact, they're the biggest fans. See, Hipsterians are not like the Gen X libertarians of the tech world. Hipsterians, the old hipsters, I think exist in a small sect of millennial corporatists or businessmen. They just like kind of doing their own thing, kind of a side of Gnosticism, like they've discovered or stumbled upon some sort of special knowledge. And I think a good archetype of Hipsterianism would be one Andrew Yang, who Elon Musk actually started following the other day. Now, Andrew Yang gained a little bit of traction back in the 2020 Democrat primary, but he has a very, let's just say it, above it all air to him. That he's better than the crazies on both the left and the right, but he's not libertarianism, no, because he's not dogmatic about anything whatsoever. The only dogma that he has within him is that he's not dogmatic. I think there is a small subsect of millennials that would primarily vote for Democrats that actually would be willing and able, I think, to join on with the America Party. I don't think it's a very big subsect, but I think it's out there. And I think it would primarily hurt Democrats. How much? Probably not very much. But that's one thing to think about. I'm not totally sold on the idea that the America Party will always hurt Republicans. I think there is a group of voters out there who are just better than you, better than the whole two-party duopoly, that would love nothing more than to show how distinguishably indistinguishable they are by joining up with Elon Musk's America Party. That's just what I think. And that's going to do it for a Wednesday. That's probably going to be the last show so far this week. Maybe one tomorrow, definitely not on Friday. Hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. We'll be back at it again for sure with No Sucks Saturday. Catch you then. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.